Hello and welcome back to our video series on explaining simply mobilizing. This is part 2 and it's entitled Our Ministry of Prophetic Mobilization. This part has 4 sessions to it. The first is an explanation on what prophetic mobilization is. The second is an explanation of our message. The third is a look at our messengers, which we refer to as mobilizers. And the fourth is on our ministry to local churches, and in particular to local church leadership and the formation of missional churches. So let's begin with session 1, and we'll attempt to answer the question, just what exactly is prophetic mobilization? Well, to begin, prophetic mobilization is both an Old and New Testament ministry. In the Old Testament, the prophet's main ministry, contrary to popular belief, was not in predicting future events. It was in fact in calling God's people back to God and challenging them to live for the reason why they were called to be God's chosen people. Israel, as we know, was taken from the nations for the nations. Israel was to be a missionary nation to all the nations of the world. In the New Testament, the prophetic ministry is exactly the same, as this missional theme flows from the Old into the New Testament. In the New Testament, the prophetic ministry was expressed through the prophetic writings of Scripture and through prophets such as Silas and Judas and others such as those named as being part of the leadership of the church at Antioch. Their prophetic message was calling God's people to God or to Christ's lordship, and to engage with God on mission in declaring the praises of Him who had called them out of darkness and into His marvelous light, as Peter put it, and engaging in the ministry of reconciliation, as Paul worded so beautifully in 2 Corinthians 5:17-20. All of which, of course, is to the people and to the peoples of the world. Prophetic mobilization concentrates its ministry in particular towards the local church, the place where most of God's people are and where missional discipleship takes place or ought to take place. The following diagram helps to put prophetic mobilization in its larger mobilization for the world Christian movement context. We see the categories of mobilization and the 3 levels within those 2 categories. Just a bit of background, this diagram was developed during the transitional period between the Kairos Course movement and the emergence of the Simply Mobilizing movement, so roughly between 2011 and 2015. The 2 categories of mobilization are apostolic and prophetic mobilization. Why are these 2 ministries mentioned and not, for example, teachers and pastors? Well, of course, all the 5 ministries mentioned by Paul in Ephesians 4:11 are involved in preparing God's people for works of service. But apostles and prophets are mentioned for very good reason, and these 2 ministries are listed by Paul in 1 Corinthians 12:28 and Ephesians 2:20 as being leadership ministries among all the other ministries to the church. And as the church's purpose on earth is defined by its mission to the world, then these 2 ministries provide the leadership to the church in order for the church to engage effectively in mission. And we should add that they provide this leadership to the church in each and every generation, and will do so until the end of the age, when, according to Jesus in Matthew 28:18-20, the redemptive mission officially ceases. In addition, we have identified 3 levels of mobilization that should be expressed by the apostolic and prophetic ministries. These being what we have termed general mobilization, specific mobilization, and field mobilization. Or we could reference them as being levels 1, 2, and 3 mobilization. Level 1 mobilization is all about helping in the formation of a biblical worldview. This worldview involves an understanding that God is on mission and that we have been called to be on mission with God. This call to be on mission with God is an integral part of our salvation. We have all been saved to serve and blessed to be a blessing to the peoples and the people of the world. No Christian has been saved just to be saved or blessed just to be blessed, right? Level 2 mobilization is where we all joyfully journey to once we have been transformed by that biblical worldview, after we have caught the vision of involvement with God on mission, and that vision in turn has caught us. Level 2 is where the gifts that God has given each of us are molded into ministry skills, where they can be used to push back darkness in people's lives and see Christ's kingdom advance. And level 3 mobilization is where we are helped to engage in mission with people and with peoples. It's where we connect with mission opportunities and in a life on being on mission with God. Every believer needs to be exposed to both prophetic and apostolic ministries. And if this does not happen, then sadly, they simply will not be mobilized into fruitful mission with God, plain and simple, because this is God's ordained way of engaging His people with Him on mission. As we often say, God calls and God anoints, but the ministries Christ has given to the church must equip God's people for works of service. Now, by identifying these 3 levels of mobilization and their apostolic and prophetic categories helps to, firstly, show us how both ministry categories complement each other in helping in the preparation of God's people for mission. And secondly, and this is very important, it also demonstrates the difference between the apostolic and prophetic ministries in the all-important process of mobilization. So our current model of mobilization does not fully reflect God's ideal. This is explained with this next diagram. This diagram is, in general, our current model, and a brief history lesson will explain how it came about. The modern missionary movement of the last 200 plus years, which we know from the Kairos course, began with William Carey at the end of the 18th century. The historical context of this era of mission was the colonial period of world history. It is important that we understand this. The modern missionary movement began in Europe, then North America. It was a movement that took the gospel, the evangelical message, to the continents of Africa, Asia, and the Americas, or from the West to the rest. It was a Western church initiative. It advanced in 3 distinct eras: the coastlands, the inlands, and then to the hidden peoples or unreached peoples. The mechanism employed for all 3 eras was E3 mission. For those of us who have done the Kairos course, we know that E3 represents the most difficult context in which cross-cultural mission could be carried out. The barriers that needed to be crossed included culture, language, and we could include the geographical challenges of long distances, plus the very hostile environments in which these missionaries had to labor. Because of all this context, we had missionary sending countries and missionary receiving countries. Mission agencies emerged and played a critical role in connecting the church to the distant mission field. We could say, therefore, that mobilization during the modern missionary era was primarily, if not exclusively, apostolic in nature. For example, people such as Hudson Taylor traveled back to England and recruited resources of people as missionaries, prayer and finance, in order to grow the missionary work where he was laboring in inland China. Apostolic mobilization was seen by churches as a recruiting ministry, and this made perfect sense considering the distance to the field and the specialist cross-cultural nature of the work involved. But this also resulted in mission or cross-cultural mission becoming a department in local churches, as our diagram shows. However, what made sense during the colonial era of world history no longer makes sense in today's world characterized by globalization. The context in which mission is carried out in today's world has changed, and changed dramatically, and for a number of very good reasons. Firstly, due to the huge successes of the modern missionary movement, the church now exists on all those continents where those missionaries labored, and in all the countries of those continents, and often in large numbers. So mission is no longer from the West to the rest. In fact, the church today is truly global. It is geographically dispersed and very culturally diverse, and is very near to the world's remaining unreached peoples, near both geographically and culturally. And secondly, as previously mentioned, the historical context in which we must now do mission has changed. It is now characterized by globalization, and globalization is a game changer, not just in mission, but also in mobilization. If the context of mission has changed, so must our approach to mobilization change. Churches often understand this new context far better than us mobilizers do. We often continue to mobilize solely from an apostolic perspective and with a recruiting mindset, which churches understandably are not too friendly towards. The fact is that today local churches often have opportunities for direct involvement in cross-cultural mission, something they never had in the previous eras of world mission. Sadly, many churches today are bypassing the specialization that so many of the agencies can provide. The dangers are many, not least of which could well be what the late Dr. Ralph Winter feared, the amateurization of mission. So, this new era of world mission demands we change. And as we do, I believe we're going to capture a model of mobilization that is very biblical, will prove very fruitful, and will see the full complement of God's agenda for this New Testament age realized. So this new approach is not just a good idea, it's a biblical idea and a God idea. This new approach to mobilization involves, in addition to apostolic mobilization, the realization and full involvement of prophetic mobilization. If Jesus gave both apostolic and prophetic ministries for leadership in the world Christian movement, then both expressions are vital. So if prophetic mobilization is incorporated in our mobilization efforts, what might mobilization now look like? This next diagram will explain how this might work. Prophetic mobilization relates to and connects directly with the local church and not directly with apostolic mobilization and with the agencies that champion apostolic mobilization. Why is this? Because the local church is where missional discipleship takes place or should take place. Local churches must become missional churches. And this is what prophetic mobilization is all about. For this reason, Simply Mobilizing is designing courses to be used in the local church by the local church in order for mobilization to be incorporated into the local church's regular discipleship program. This is to help discipleship become missional discipleship, where on mission with God is understood to be what every Christian does. And we have a program we have called Interface, designed to help church leadership grow their churches into truly missional churches. And we have a segment in this series on Interface. So where does apostolic mobilization then fit in? Well, when local churches become missional churches, then they, the local church, initiate engagement with apostolic mobilization with the realization that if they don't, then the full expression of their church and their people and mission to a large extent will be frustrated. If prophetic mobilization develops and expresses this ministry well, then so many churches will be connecting with these apostolic expressions, especially the agencies. They will be inundated with resources, and their indispensable contribution to the world Christian movement will be reinvigorated and fully realized. How good would that be? It has always been my burden to see these two God-ordained structures of modality and sodality, or synagogue and kivra, local church and agency, come together with united vision for the world Christian movement. There is every possibility that if we get this right, then we just might see in this new generation the fulfillment of the prayer Jesus prayed in John 17, that they may be one, that the world might know. As I mentioned before, local churches in today's globalized world have many opportunities for direct involvement in cross-cultural mission. It is also quite clear that near neighbor mission, or E2 mission, will be the most common expression of cross-cultural mission going forward. And because mission is both same culture and cross-culture, there is that direct channel to the field of ministry, as our diagram shows. Also today, there are a growing number of other kevra-type structures that may not refer to themselves as mission agencies, but that provide huge assistance in connecting God's people with strategic missional opportunities, especially in near-neighbor E2 situations. In conclusion, a famous quote from Albert Einstein is perhaps appropriate as we bring this segment to a close. He said, "If we keep on doing the same things we've always done, we're going to get the same results." Are we happy with the results we are presently getting through our mobilization efforts and over recent decades? No, we are not, right? The reasons are many, of course, but I do believe that one major reason is because we have not changed our mobilization approach. We continue to mobilize as if we were still in the colonial era of world history. We are not. Things have changed, but in general, we haven't. We must see prophetic mobilization emerge. We must see it do what God ordained it to do, so that both apostolic and prophetic mobilization can provide the leadership necessary for the church and all God's people to engage with God and mission in this most exciting and potentially most fruitful generation for world Christian mission ever.